Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board.
Oh! Well, hello tubers, hope you're doing well wherever you are in this crazy YouTube universe. Today, I figured I would regale you with something that I almost never talk about, and a story that I've never talked about publicly online. And it's the time I nearly got one of Canada's most notorious serial killers killed himself. I know, because it's not a typical day where, I know most of you nearly get serial killers killed every day, but I don't. And it's an interesting story. It's never been made public. And on rare occasion, me and my retired colleagues will talk about this story, but it doesn't come up too often. It's like war stories, but enough time is elapsed, and not only Willie Pickton, the serial killer himself, is dead, but I'm retired, so I can't be sued. I can't lose my job. And Pickton or his family can't sue because the statute of limitations for civil litigation in British Columbia has long run out. So, but current staff that are still working there that might be aware of this story, you know, they're intimidated not to talk, or else they're going to lose their jobs. But you know, they keep spreading rumors that you're going to lose your pension if you talk publicly, but absolutely not true under Canadian law. So I have all the rights constitutionally to speak about these things. So we're going to do today. It's going to be fun. So as my longtime viewers, because probably quite a few people that are not my regulars on this channel are going to watch this, but I've had a long career working in government, and that's from national defense to the elections, Canada, Sheriff's Department, Coroner's Department, and the BC Corrections Branch. So among the many hats I wore over the years I was a correctional officer and a acting correctional supervisor. I guess you'd probably call it like a sergeant's rank. But today's story is what happened on a unique situation. My post happened to be the control room. Now, for those of you who do not know, but modern prisons, and we're talking about the North Fraser Pretrial Centre. It was fairly new at the time. I was part of the original staff that opened it in spring of 2001. In fact, I transferred over from another prison on Vancouver Island. So let's have a little seat on the bench here next to the lake while I regale you with the story. So control rooms in modern facilities, they literally control everything. They control movement of people, door control systems, even the phone lines, they can be disabled from there. But you control who can enter the building, who can leave, who can move within it, things like that. And it's kind of, for those of you who are into casinos, it's kind of like a casino control room. It's kind of dark. It's got the mirrored glass, so people can't really see inside. And you control hundreds of cameras and door control systems, fire control systems. You control it everything. That's why it's called control. It's a highly trusted position. And me and another guy, I won't mention his name, I'll mention his initials, GB. Me and GB, we probably set the record for the most thousands of hours spent in there, because we were accurate, we were fast, we were safe. It was kind of like a video game, and you had a partner, and you worked 12-hour shifts, typically 6 to 6, you know, either AM or PM. But your job, primarily, more than anything else, is not just to keep the prison running in terms of the doors and the cameras and the sensors outside, but to facilitate staff getting to places during emergencies when you have what's called the code yellow. And they happened all the time. And they're code red, that's for an escape. Those were a lot more rare, significantly rarer. But anyway, one day, I can't even remember the exact date of this. I'd have to dig through a lot of records. But Willie Pickton was already in custody. And for those of you who do not know, Canada only has a handful of really notorious serial killers that have really captured the media's attention over the years. You know, in the 80s, it was the child predator there. What was his name? He attacked people in British Columbia. Clifford Olson, that's it. How the name escapes me. He's dead now too. In fact, BC Corrections had him during pre-trial too. But I do remember him, but not on a professional level. But I do remember Willie on a professional level because I worked there while Willie was in custody. We call him Willie. I don't know why. There's very few inmates that we would, you know, everybody that was a sworn member, when you said Willie, you knew who you're talking about. Because every other inmate, if it was Jones, Smith, or Brown, you know, his last names. But for Willie Pickton, we just would say Willie. Or the pig farmer, because he was a pig farmer. So he was awaiting trial for many, many, many murders involving the disappearance of, let's just say, street workers from the downtown east side and adjacent areas. And they spent months ripping apart his land in Port Coquitlam. Ironically, from the roof of the prison that he was being held in for pretrial, because he couldn't be granted bail, of course, because this was, you know, he was accused of dozens and dozens of murders. I think only eventually convicted of 6, just to make it easier. It cost hundreds of millions of dollars to convict him. And I used to joke, because the Olympics for 2010 was coming, I'd say, hey, look, we can't afford a conviction for Willie and the Olympics. We need to choose our battle. So, yeah, they literally had to comb every inch of the land of Willie's property. But you could see Willie's land from the roof of the prison that he was being held in. That's how close it was, because the North Fraser Pretrial is near the train tracks off Kingsway, 1451 Kingsway. Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. You can Google map that. But Willie's place is across the train tracks and across Lougheed Highway. In fact, it's a whole bunch of retail outlet malls and stuff that are on the land today. They didn't really put any residential land. But he was awaiting trial as anybody who is arrested in the area. And we had a lot of high-profile people come through North Fraser over the years. From guys like Saxena, who stole millions of dollars from a bank in Thailand, who made management so nervous because he had so much money he could have given everybody $1 million that was on a shift and say, just let a helicopter land on the roof to get me out of here. We had a war criminal from World War II that was geriatric and but still wanted for atrocities, so he had to be held for extradition and turned over, and he of course died in Europe in jail. And you know, some celebrity washed up people that don't need to be mentioned, but generally if you're arrested in the Vancouver area on that side of the Fraser, you're probably going to do pretrial lockup there, awaiting trial or awaiting bail if you can perfect bail. So Willie, at the time, this was before the taxpayers spent hundreds of thousands of dollars building this special living unit for Willie Pickton, because he could have no contact with anyone other than staff or his legal counsel. Because the problem with Willie Pickton is because he was alleged, well, I don't have to say alleged anymore, he killed a lot of prostitutes that were working in the downtown east side. And a lot of them were mothers and sisters of other offenders who are recidivist offenders that are always in custody. So, plus there's always somebody who wants to make a name for themselves by killing Willie Pickton. Just like what happened. This is kind of what motivated me to do this whole entire story right now, because the whole chapter is closed now. Willie Pickton was killed just 2 years ago while serving his life sentences by an inmate. I think the name is Martin Charret. I hope I didn't get the name wrong. But he did it for the victims. He saved a lot of taxpayers a lot of money. Of course, he picked up a life sentence himself. So Willie is now deceased, and his killer is going to do the time for that. But I guess from a taxpayer's perspective, I should thank the gentleman, because he did save Canadian taxpayers a lot of money, housing and healthcare for Willie. But anyway, getting back to North Fraser, going back to, this is somewhere between 03 and 05, I believe. At the top of my head, I don't have my records ahead of me, but I happened to be working in control, and it was the end of afternoon shift, so it was around 10 p.m. where the afternoon shift was getting ready to leave and go home, and then the overnight crew would take over. And just as that had happened, there was a fire alarm that went off in segregation. Now, for those of you who don't know, segregation is like jail for those who can't function in regular jail. And that's where Willie Pickton was being kept, in segregation. Because he had to be kept away, single bunked and away from everybody else. So this was just months before a proper living unit where you'd have a lot more room and away from everybody else was built. So the funny thing is the jail is designed in such a way that it's all electronic door control systems. So when someone comes to a door, I'd see an image on both sides and I'd make a decision whether to let them through or not. But there was also a fail-safe system that they initially fixed somewhat. That when the jail first opened in spring of '01, it was wired like a hotel. That if there was a sprinkler alarm, like a sprinkler flow detected, meaning that an inmate just took a broomstick and knocked off a sprinkler head, it would trigger an alarm and it would cause what's called a gang unlock. The door control systems back then would just gang unlock all the cells in that area. Not in the whole prison, but just in that living unit. And that was a really, really bad idea because sometimes you got people locked up that are a danger to other inmates or staff. Or you have two groups of inmates that can't get along and you'd have like A group, B group on the same living unit. But anyway, it was an oversight, I guess. And they fixed it. And now, whenever a fire was detected, or a sprinkler flow, a countdown was initiated of 5 minutes, at which time a gang unlock would happen. Now, I'm the guy running the whole show electronically, and a little riot breaks out. That's what caused the sprinkler flow. A small little mini riot in segregation. So my partner's off taking care of it. He's he's a designated responder. If I wasn't sitting at the board, it would have been me being the responder. But as it is, I'm just the great Wizard of Oz, sitting there at the control panel, kind of like an air traffic controller, so to speak, but for violent offenders. So anyway, my partner goes to respond, and there's a whole bunch of other people from around the building that are hoping to go home, but they're willing to chip in and get this problem solved so they can get going home. So I'm facilitating the movement of getting the staff in there to help and whatnot, and all sorts of crazy stuff going. And there's always a few yahoos that will phone and go, "Hey, what's going on?" And they go, "Don't bother me. I'm doing my job. Why are you calling me in the control room?" I always hated that. It was even worse when paramedics or fire department was called. I would get staff call me that weren't even on duty and go, "Hey, what's going on?" I go, "Look, dude, this is not a good time. If you want to talk about it over beers in a day or two, but you don't call people right when shit's happening." So anyway, I got a lot on my plate, and moving staff in to help put out this little mini riot caused by pretty much just one guy. But there's protocol. You can't just go in there with tear gas and sticks, and as much as it would be great just to beat them into submission every time. But there's protocols and rules and policy, and you know how it is. Government kind of hamstrings reality, because sometimes the right way is the way that if you just ignored policy. But that's a whole different conversation. So anyway, picture me all alone in this dark control room, getting everybody in to help quell this problem. And then, a lot of radio chatter, a lot of stuff going on. And then I look behind me and I see that countdown that can initiate a gang unlock. It starts at 5 minutes, and typically, you got 5 minutes to just hit an acknowledgement button, and it stops the gang unlock process. And it's across the control room. I can't just reach from it because there's 4 computer systems in the control room that monitor various critical things. So I turn around and figure, oh god, time to acknowledge that. And I literally see it go 3, 2, 1. And I know what is about to happen. A gang unlock in segregation where the most notorious and dangerous criminals are being held, including Willie Pickton. Now, luckily, we had a bit of staff down there and some people that knew what they're talking about, including a good friend of mine who, we'll use the initials, SG. He spent a lot of time in segregation and very competent and a big boy. And, you know, it never hurts to have a couple big boys that can really handle things, especially when they're super competent with how things work. So when a gang unlock happens at a living unit, it sounds like a nest of wasps. It literally sounds bzzz, like, as you hear these electronic motors on the doors, and there's 30 cells. There's 3 tiers, 10 cells per tier. They all activate simultaneously, and it sounds like I said, like a hive of hornets. And you hear the bzzz, and of course, SG, he knows exactly what has just happened. So he's on his feet, he's up the stairwell, and he knows. Because a lot of the inmates were just sleeping, they're not paying attention, but there was a couple inmates, because they're listening to the hubbub of the little riot going on. They push on their door and they realize their door's open. Suddenly there's a couple guys, they've left their cells. They're heading to get Willie. They're gonna kill him. They're gonna go into the history books if they're successful. I guess like the history books with Martin Charret that just killed Willie 2 years ago. So anyway, Willie manages to get whisked away to another cell in a different part of that same area, alone. And then staff are quickly locking those doors that opened. And so the entire plan was thwarted by quick-acting staff. Now, it would have been a lot better if I would have just caught that and avoided the whole entire gang unlock entirely. Well, let's put it this way. For the years I spent in control afterwards, that same thing never happened again. I learned a valuable lesson. Now, management was so nervous about this. Technically speaking, at the time, I could have been suspended without pay as for what happened. They were so terrified of negative publicity and the fact that Willie nearly got killed that nobody talked about it. I didn't need a shop steward. Of course, at the time, I was a shop steward for the union. I didn't have to lawyer up or anything. For days, I was expecting that somebody'd come talk to me. I think there was a few informal discussions of like what happened. Riot, I'm all alone. I'm getting staff in there. I didn't acknowledge the countdown in time, and it gang unlocked. That's my story, because it's true, right? So if it wasn't for staff like SG and probably close to 10 others that literally grabbed these 2 guys that were gonna go whack Willie and locked him up, and then got Willie at the same time somewhere to safety and locked up alone. Now you're gonna laugh. Now this person, initials SG, I got his phone number still right in my phone. I could call him right now. I'm not sure he'd want to talk about this, but we've talked about it privately over the years. But for him saving Willie Pickton's ass, he got a $50 gift card. I think it was for like Petro Canada or something like that. $50. $50. Oh lordy, lordy, lordy. $50. Oh. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. $50 gift card. Oh, you can't make this shit up. So, yeah. But it goes to show that, one problem somewhere. It's kind of like plane crashes. I've been watching a lot of Mayday episodes, which are like produced in Canada, where plane crashes. And there's a system problem somewhere, and it causes another problem, which amplifies and causes an ancillary issue that can actually you know, really hurt or kill people. You know, it's just, and that's kind of the story of the day with what happened then. You know, if this little mini riot would have been quelled faster and the sprinkler wasn't activated, none of this would have happened. If I would have acknowledged that countdown timer more expeditiously, this wouldn't have happened. There wouldn't be a story. But it all ended well. Willie Pickton was convicted, I think, of around 6 murders and went on to start serving his sentences, and then was subsequently killed 2 years ago in 2024, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And now it's all history. I can chuckle about it. A lot of black humor. A lot of black humor. You gotta laugh. You know, I think a lot of people in my position, we rather laugh than cry or get freaked out or be angry, or, you know, we just laugh at the madness. It's organized madness. And like I said, enough time has elapsed and the people involved are gone, and I'm retired, that I can finally share this and get this off my chest and talk about it. I got a whole bunch of these crazy stories with people like this, but yeah, we had terrorists, even ones involved in the 9/11 attack. We had a lot of international fugitives. We had a lot of, yeah, even some celebrity people, fugitives, people wanted. And it was never a dull moment with that, even small things. I remember when I first got hired and I worked in Vancouver Island, you know, a realtor that you know kills his wife. And then you go to work on Wednesday and you meet the guy. It's just surreal, right? It's always surreal. And now, when it came to Willie, let's talk one last thing before we go here, because this video's getting long, but we might as well finish it up and where we don't have to talk about Willie Pickton anymore. But he was a model prisoner and not a risk to us men, you know, at all. Even the female staff. His target was for female working ladies, so to speak, that worked the lower end of the trade, let's just say. And, you know, he killed them. He made the bodies go away. Did it for a long period of time. Probably thought he could get away with it forever, because he picked on people that were perceived to have no value to society, and that they weren't missed when they would disappear. So while he was in custody, he kept a very, very clean cell. He was not a needy prisoner, where like the typical protective custody inmates are very needy, very emotionally needy. In fact, that's always a sign whenever I see people in society that are very needy. Red flag that there's something really wrong with them. But Willie was not needy, to the point that he only was allowed contact with staff and his legal team and nobody else. We had to clear the hallways in the entire facility when we would turn him over to the sheriff's department for transport to the court system for his court appearances. So, you know, we did our best, and we took it very seriously to keep him alive, and I'm the only one that came that close to getting him whacked. Oh well. You win some, you lose some, right? I guess if it would have happened and I would have lost my job, life would have gone on for me, right? It wouldn't have gone on for Willie. But anyway, like I said, as a prisoner, I didn't have an issue with him on a professional level. Don't mistake that I'm endorsing his horrible behavior, because I'm not. But on a professional management level of offenders, he made no demands on staff. He kept his cell very clean. He so rarely would he ask for something. There was times where I'd be doing my rounds and I'd run into him, and I gotta check to see if the guy's alive every half hour or so, or every 45 minutes. And he'd go, hey boss, can I get a piece of paper and a pencil? And I go, you bet, Willie. Next rounds I'll bring it to you. You know, little things like that, or he'd have a letter he needed for counsel. Can you post this? And I go, yep, no problem. Just stick it through your cell door, or give it to me through the pass-through trap. I'll make sure it gets posted out. Now, he rarely asked for anything, you know, and these were things that, you know, inmates were entitled to anyway, but But because he took up so little time for staff that, you know, if it caused me to make an extra effort for a few seconds to get the job done for him, it's great, because I probably wouldn't hear from him again for weeks or months. So on a management level, very, very easy to manage. In fact, it's the protective custody punks that are needy. They're the worst. They're the guys that they can't do their own time. They can't keep a clean cell because they live like a pig. They cause nothing but problems for other inmates and for staff and for management. So, but Willie was not one of them. Well, he won't be missed, but sadly there is always a small number of people like Willie Pickton in society, and there's not much you can do to, other than once you find out who they are, you got to keep them away from society. But luckily, like I said, in conclusion at least, Willie's gone, and the Canadian taxpayers will no longer have to pay for his federal penitentiary sentence. So anyway, that's enough yapping for me. I've got it off my chest. Finally said the story, because I was finally in the mood and enough time had elapsed, and the legal consequences are no more. So you put your comments down below on my story of Willie Pickton and how I nearly got him whacked at the North Fraser Pretrial Centre. Oh, and speaking of North Fraser Pretrial Centre, there's a lot of stuff brewing with the Al-Khalil escape. For those of you that have watched till this point, a lot of things going, a lot of corruption allegations for staff, a lot. And there is a serious problem with corruption there at North Fraser Pretrial. So maybe at some point when a little bit more of the story comes out, I'm going to talk about that, because I got to be careful. Because in that, if I say the wrong thing, I could get sued, especially when I mention names. But anyway, you guys have a great day, and put your comments down below, and I'll talk to you soon. Over and out. Can go to figure out what we've done, what we need to do. Yeah, I got you, I got you, I got you.